Hello, my name is Sandra. It is currently 4:07 a.m. and I am in my family's basement. So, it is the perfect circumstance for me to start talking about ghosts. Specifically ghosts as they appear in Tracey Moffatt's 1993 anthology film beDevil. Tracey Moffatt's beDevil is an Australian film released in 1993 that consists of 3 different ghost stories: Mr. Chuck, Choo 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 Choo, and Lovin' the Spin I'm In. Moffat is an Aboriginal Australian artist, photographer, and filmmaker who's known for creating elaborate sets with exaggerated dollhouse features, designed to emphasize their artificiality. beDevil is a prime example of this. The film is concerned with Aboriginal subjects as they relate to a broader Australian diaspora. In an interview with Coco Fosco for Bomb, she says regarding her oeuvre that she was looking for a nowhere space. Australia is multicultural and it's completely natural for me to represent that mixing of races. In beDevil, she presents this multiculturalism and the fraught past of Australian colonialism through the lens of the ghost story. Suppressed history expresses itself through the paranormal, which is in turn placed in a subjective, fragmentary realm where interpretation is as essential to the establishment of cultural identity as material reality, emblematic of Stuart Hall's essay, Cultural Identity and Diaspora. Moffat then represents this ideological struggle for control over the positionality of cultural identity by pitting herself as artist, as designer of the dollhouse, wherein suppressed culture and violence can be expressed, versus documentarian sensationalism that warps the meaning of cultural identity into a sanitized, commodified resource. beDevil's ghosts are all in some way connected to ideas of mobility or displacement. The ghost in Mr. Chuck is a United States soldier who drowned in a swamp while stationed on Bribie Island. His ghost is disrupted by the development of a movie theater above the swamp. The ghost in Choo 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 is a blind girl whose family had lived deep in the Queensland desert, and when a railroad was constructed next to their house, she was killed by it. The ghost in Loving the Spin I'm In are a young couple who had run away from home and ended up at a harbour town in northern Queensland, where they both die in a fire under mysterious circumstances. The ghosts are trapped at the place of their death. The GI struggles to crawl out of the swamp, the blind girl still walks the railroad, tapping with a cane, and the lovers dance in Dimitri's warehouse, forever tied to the condemned property. Here, using this classic Gothic trope of physical space being paranormally altered by fraught history, Moffat sets loose her craft. In a desperate race to capture the essence of the story's subjects, she has multiple storytellers, including herself, relaying often contradictory accounts. In Mr. Chuck, there are 3 temporal levels to the story: the death of the GI, which is only conveyed orally, the GI haunting Rick as a child, and the development of the movie theater, which is the filmic level, being shot in one of Moffat's dollhouses, with the camera unacknowledged. And finally, the documentary level, which interviews Rick as an incarcerated adult, and Shelley, who is familiar with both the GI and Rick as a child, and is the daughter of one of the primary developers of the island. The documentarian level highlights a sort of historical revisionism that has occurred with the colonization of Bribie Island. The abuse that Rick suffered is acknowledged, but also brushed over in favor of recounting a sanitized, glamorous spin on the island's transformation as a site of leisure and vacation, immediately followed by a montage of the post-development island paired with a beachy synth soundtrack that frames the footage as a commercial. Rick's story is different, but as an imprisoned adult being interviewed by a single shoddy camera, as compared to Shelley's 3-camera setup, his perspective is, formally speaking, devalued. It is only through Moffat's dollhouse recreations that she can relay the story free from colonial revision. However, it is notable that Moffat employs an extremely hyper-realistic stylization, her set obviously internal and lined with vibrant colors, establishing a sense of heightened unreality. Patricia Mellencamp, in her essay Haunted History, Tracey, Moffat, and Julie Dash, writes that Moffat lives simultaneously in at least two cultures which are industrially and technologically divergent. If time is measured by industrial development, as it is in linear histories of progress, she lives in two time periods. She remembers, speaks from within, colonial experiences. The unsettling exaggeration of space and behavior is itself an expression of Moffat's alternate vision of the past as it exists in the present. It coils forward and can manifest itself into space, into one's sensorial experiences. It is an extension of Hall's argument that practices of representation always implicate the positions from which we speak or write, the positions of enunciation. What recent theories of enunciation suggest is that, though we speak, so to say, in our own name, of ourselves and from our own experiences, nevertheless, who speaks and the subject who is spoken of are never identical, never exactly in the same place. Identity is not as transparent or unproblematic as we think. Perhaps, instead of thinking of identity as an already accomplished fact, which the new cultural practices then represent, we should think instead of identity as a production, which is never complete, always in progress, and always constituted with, not outside, representation. This view problematizes the very authority and authenticity to which the term cultural identity lays claim. Moffat's clashing layers of perspective are a formal articulation of the positionality that Hall writes about. He goes on to apply this reasoning to his own questions of representation, asking, what is the nature of this, which drives the new forms of visual and cinematic representation? Is it only a matter of unearthing that which the colonial experience buried and overlaid, bringing to light the hidden continuities it suppressed? Or is it a quite different practice entailed, not the rediscovery but the production of identity? Not an identity grounded in the archaeology, but in the retelling of the past. We should not for a moment underestimate or neglect the importance of the act of imaginative rediscovery, which this conception of a rediscovered essential identity entails. Hidden histories have played a critical role in the emergence of many of the most important social movements of our time. In Choo 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 Choo, Moffat expands on this cinematic vision of production and identity. The documentarian aspect of this section goes beyond the interview format of Mr. Chuck and becomes nearly as dynamic as the camera in the dollhouse sections. Additionally, instead of presenting a single source of cultural erasure, you're shown how an entire community can restructure and commodify the past. The story of the blind girl's death has become local legend, the dilapidated ruins of her home a site of spectacle. The past is being perpetuated by a coterie of local businesses and casual tour guides, but the context of the tragedy, and therefore the negative impact of industrial development, has been erased. In her article Haunting Secrets, Tracey Moffat's beDevil, Catherine Summerhays writes about beDevil as a bewildered system of secrets, ingrained in a barrage of bizarre details that pass by unremarked. She points to instances of supernatural events that are disconnected from the primary hauntings, such as the mean lights in Choo 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 Choo, and the blonde-haired developer's brief transformation into a threatening phallic image. She also describes instances in which distance is created through audiovisual limitation. In Choo 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 Choo, she points out how the women have conversation that the camera is unable to access. She writes that Moffat's visual and audiovisual images are not comfortable. They pose too many questions. She teases her audiences with hard-to-see images and sounds and asks questions about vision, memory, and history that do not imply that there are any simple or even corresponding answers. Rather, her visual and audiovisual interrogations invite reflection on the usefulness of ambiguity and uncertainty as appropriate responses to the terrifying beauty and mayhem that exists both in her texts and in the world from which she draws her images. These senses of ambiguity and uncertainty embedded within her films and photoseries are not restricted to considerations of narrative and meaning. They are also very much at the heart of her entire artistic practice. She plays with artistic form in ways that invite critical speculation on how far it is possible to push categories of genre and artistic form before their boundaries dissolve, and only questions of cultural meaning remain. This ambiguity is essential to Moffat's layering of time and history as it exists institutionally and in physical memory. Her dollhouses reconstruct a past riddled with details extracted from Hall's hidden histories, that officially never existed, yet nevertheless are more true than the narratives that have been carefully put into place by the colonialist influence on culture. They maintain an aesthetic honesty that responds more to the arc of time and history in the macro level than with the immediate empirical reality of the present. The final ghost story, Love in the Spin I'm In, presents something almost like a conclusion to this problem of perspective and representation. There is no documentary aspect to this episode. It is told entirely inside the dollhouse, without intervention. Moffat's camera, no longer prodded at by additional figures, is now able to communicate with the ghosts. In the previous shorts, before the ghosts fully materialize on camera, the film cuts away to the documentary sections. The exception is when the girl appears in Choo 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 Choo, but instead of cutting to documentary, the entire episode simply ends after she appears. But in Love in the Spin I'm In, not only are they fully embodied, but we follow them into a dream realm, in which they dance and dance, expressed in a warehouse that is impossibly larger on the inside than it appears from the outside. They've carved out space within this building, condemned to be demolished, and ultimately destroy their system of confinement, disappearing Dimitri the landlord, and trapping the two real estate developers in their spinning car. Moffat questions objectivity and empiricism in beDevil, positioning herself and her camera as an arbiter of reality, warping her story world into a surreal, emotionally driven landscape. In the interview with Coco Fosco, she approves of the idea of herself as a presence within the film, agreeing that the characters are aware of me. Obviously, in the documentarian sections, her presence is diegetic. However, I think she enjoys the term in a more nebulous sense as well. As filmmaker, and as designer of the dollhouses, Moffat's worlds are reflections of a past originating from herself just as much as they are representative of hidden histories. The positionality of her formal articulation is not simply defined in the way that Hall lays out. Instead, her voice echoes, granting a reflexivity and even sentience to these ghosts as they slowly realize that the memories they originate from have no concrete source. Thanks for checking this out. Let me know in the comments if there are any ghosts around, because I know this place is haunted. Thank you!